welcome to On Scene. I'm Mason Matthews. I got my co-host. What's your name?
Joey Huffman. Steele.
And with us, we have the Fire Prevention Administrator, Ross Coleman. So on this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about winter fire safety and what we can do to safely stay warm. It doesn't get cold very often here in West Texas. It feels like we've got 12 months of summer, but it does get cold. It happens to be cold today.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's important that we do an episode and talk a little bit about how to safely stay warm in our homes and what precautions we need to take, what hazards may exist.
Sure.
Ross, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And you are, when it comes to what we're about to talk about, you are absolutely, I would say, a subject matter expert.
Absolutely.
On precautions and do's and don'ts. And when those do's and don'ts don't happen, usually that's when we're on scene,
That's
I guess
right.
you could say, for lack of a better word. So I do think this is very important. And I feel like, anything you Google, anything you look at, any stat you come up with, I would say that most fire deaths happen during these months, would they not? I mean, in these winter months when things start to get cold. I think what we're going to talk about today is crucial. So let's start and let's talk right off. When it gets cold, we want to stay warm. There's many different forms of that, whether you're starting a fire in your fireplace, you are kicking your heater on for the first time in 12 months. I think we're going to talk about here in a little bit about some other alternative methods that maybe are good or not good to do. Heaters, right? Plugging in heaters to walls. That can create some issues, and we'll kind of talk about it. So let's start with our tried and true starting a fire in the fireplace. Tell me a little bit about, I feel that is probably the most conventional. A lot of people that they like sitting around the fire, it's nice and cozy, but what are some, let's talk a little bit about some safety stuff. What do they need to be looking out for? What do they need to do? What do they need to not do?
Well, as you just said, a lot of people leave their fireplaces dormant for 9-10 months
Right.
on average. Here in San Angelo, we could end up like this year not having a very cold winter. And then when we do, in the 13th month later, here we are putting our fireplaces on for the first time. So a lot of people don't do routine maintenance on their fireplace, so they're not using any type of creosote log cleaners, anything like that. Creosote, when you hear that term, you want to think of tar. It's a byproduct of pyrolysis or combustion. Builds up inside the chimney flue, and then as it builds up, it can start to get knocked off and come down. So it's really important that that get cleaned out the proper way so that you don't get a fire that results from that at some point in time.
How often? Is that something we need to be doing?
I don't think you need to
necessarily
necessarily do it on an annual basis,
Okay.
but I would say every 3 to 5 years, that's
Okay.
a good practice.
Okay.
And sometimes, it does cost money to get a chimney sweep out to get them to do that. I think the more often you do it, the safer you're going to be. If you use your fireplace fairly often during winter, then I think absolutely an annual clean out and check and cleaning is the way to go. We've seen fireplaces that maybe a homeowner built with a kit, probably didn't do it correctly, so the flue's not always connected to the top of the box is not properly sealed or insulated, or when you get up into the fireplace, the bricks around has got loose mortar in it, that flue's not connected right, so you start getting smoke into the air plenum inside the box, getting into your attic, which can cause fires. We've also seen we saw someone several years ago drill a hole in the back of their house into the fireplace and try to connect their grill into the fireplace to vent out the grill so they could be cooking undercover. That sounds great, but then what they did is that grease and hot air got in there and knocked that creosote down, caused a house fire.
Wow.
So the cleaning and maintenance is really important. Also important is to have a mesh screen or a tempered glass screen so you don't get any embers flying off. And then on the top of that chimney, make sure you have a spark arrestor, something to catch embers flying away and, that type of thing. And keep it closed, but keep it clean. Some people will start their fireplaces and they won't open the flue up. So then all of a sudden they get a backlash of fire into the chimney hearth area, and it starts to catch that area on fire. Then they can't reach in there to shut the chimney flue. So you want to check your flues. You want to make sure that the levers work, the boxes are clean, that they're sealed properly. There are materials out there. There's fire-rated caulking that you can use. There's some just for fireplaces to fix cracks in the box, to fix your brick mortar surround. But if you have somebody come and check it on a regular routine basis, that's the way to go.
Okay. And I mean, obviously making the fire, I mean, we don't want stuff around, people got stuff up on their hearths, and people, decorations maybe up on, I mean, we want to keep that area pretty clear too, I would imagine.
You want to keep that area clear, and the only thing you really want to burn is what we call seasoned wood. That's just a fancy term for dried out wood. Unseasoned wood, when you start it up, it's going to take a while because it's going to try to get all the water out of the wood cells, if you would, before it can start taking off. So it will take a lot of time, and then in the meantime, you're going to get a lot of copious amounts of smoke. Gotcha. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to put anything else in there. Trash, paper, 2x4s. We get a lot of calls for illegal burns around town, and people are burning building materials. That's actually an offense. It's a violation of some of our quality rules through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So why would we do that in a house? So even an untreated 2x4 still has some chemical basis to it. It can release a lot of bad toxins in your house. So if it doesn't cause a fire, it can prematurely release some gases that can cause you a lot of problems.
So we talked about, obviously, the maintenance and care of your chimney or of your fireplace, and, not to have it around it. But what about leaving it, right? You start a fire, we're watching a movie, maybe, I think most fireplaces are going to be, in a general living area. Now I'm tired, I want to go to bed, and it'll burn out. And then they go to bed and leave it burning in the, good, bad?
That's bad. That's a big mistake.
Okay.
You never want to leave your fire unattended, and you never want to leave the house, and you never want to go to bed with that on. So if you still have wood on your fire, you need to let it burn itself out. If you still have a little bit left and it's just slightly going, I would collect it, put it in a metal container, take it outside, and pour water on it. Okay. Don't reuse old logs. Throw that stuff out. Get rid of it. But that's one of the worst things you can do. You can build carbon monoxide up in your home. If you don't have carbon monoxide detection, you could end up displacing the oxygen content in your house, and you could suffocate. So definitely do not recommend that.
You had mentioned earlier the chimney sweep. We burn our fireplace a lot during the winter. We go through a lot of wood, and the family just really enjoys, having the fireplace. And so I try to annually have a chimney sweep come out, and he was very helpful, showing me where, that the maintenance that will need to be done here in a couple of years, cleaning it out every year. He was able to guide me on how to be as safe as we can be with it. So I really encourage you, it was not very expensive. I really encourage you to, again, if you burn much wood, I would try to do that annually, like you said.
There's something to be said for good maintenance on everything in your home.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Plumbing, electrical, fireplaces are no different.
Good deal. Good stuff. Well, let's talk. So we've talked about, how to heat ourselves, making a fire in our fireplace. Let's talk about some other forms of heat. So let's talk a little bit about space heaters.
Okay.
I feel like, as a firefighter, just in an educational standpoint, I feel like we do a lot of education on space heaters and what they can possibly do. I feel like we see this in the news a lot as well. I mean, first of all, what is a space heater?
Space heater is generally a portable device used to place in a room to generate heat. They come in many forms, fueled, oil-based, ceramic. Electric is probably the most common. You saw the big fire that we had up in the Northeast recently. It killed several people due to space heaters. And I think that in general terms, space heaters are effective. And I don't think that space heaters in and of themselves are the problem. It's a human behavioral issue, okay? And, if you think about it, human beings we're the only species on the planet that can change our environment to suit us. We've got AC in our cars, right? So we want to be comfortable, so we'll put that in, but we don't always follow manufacturers' recommendations and safety protocols. In the office space, we find a lot of space heaters in offices. Here at the city, we found some. I can go all over town and I can find, various people putting those space heaters on. The problem is usually the proximity of those devices to combustible materials. Now, when I say combustible materials, I'm talking some of the more solid objects, the cloths, fabrics and that type of thing. So in offices, we've got lots of paper products, and offices can tend to be small. So typical safety guidelines put out by the National Fire Protection Association said have that thing 3 feet from anything else. And I can guarantee you can go anywhere in town and you can find a space heater under somebody's desk trying to keep their legs warm, or next to papers, next to fabrics, next to curtains in office spaces and so forth. So it can cause a lot of problems. At the home, we put them in and we do a real cardinal no-nos. We hook them up to an extension cord. And why do we do that? Because we want them closer to where our beds are or where we're sitting. The worst thing you can do is use a space heater at night. When you go to sleep, those things should be turned off and unplugged, okay? You can't control what happens. You don't know what's going on. If you're sleeping, you're out of it, and if a pet goes by, can knock it over. And even if you have the tip-over switch where the unit tips over and it kills the power, it's still got heat to it.
Still warm,
and if you've got carpet or fabric right there, it is going to ignite that and cause a fire.
Right.
I don't know the exact circumstances surrounding the Northeast, but we've seen space heaters in town that are too close to beds, curtains, and so forth, and have ended up causing structure fires.
Right.
Now, when that happens, that really decreases your ability to get out of your house if you're in the room of origin, right? So it's a big issue. So it's not that these devices are bad. It's really the use of them.
So you had mentioned, turning them off before you go to bed, never leaving it on. Did the same rules apply for like a heating blanket or a heating pad? I know a lot of times people will put those in bed with them and warm it. I mean, are those any safer or?
I would always use caution. Now in my business, over the years, and you guys too, you've seen a mixed bag of things that have occurred that cause fires. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that, with the exception of central air and some devices and some other things, you really shouldn't keep things like those plugged in, especially at night when you're asleep. I can see using those devices, during the day when you're awake, you're watching TV, you have a heating blanket on. I think that's perfectly acceptable. But I was just having a conversation with my father about this, and he said, when I was a kid, he lived up in Andrews, Texas, and the winter came. They had fireplaces going, and they had space heaters, electrical space heaters. And he said, but we unplugged them at night. And I said, well, how did you keep warm? He said, we used blankets and quilts back then. We didn't have central air.
Right.
I think that you need to just be very, very careful about that.
Right. Okay. Well, in 26 years at the fire department, one of the fires that sticks out the most in my mind, and all this time was due to a space heater, and it was a gas fired back then. It had more gas fired, and it was a woman that had on a long. There was nothing around it. She had put it together safely that there was nothing within 3 feet of it, but she had on a long house coat and was standing there trying to get warm beside it, and it ignited the house coat, and it went from there. But that's one of the fires that sticks out most in my mind, and it was a space heater that was the origin, was the cause.
So if someone's going to use space heaters, I think, obviously, as long as they're being produced and sold, and somebody's cold, they're going to try to be comfortable, right? So they're going to go buy them and they're going to use them. How, if they are going to use them, what is, I know what earlier you said you were talking about manufacturer specifications. What do they, if they are going to use it, what are some do's? And then what, we already know the don'ts, but how do they use it safely?
First and foremost, follow the manufacturer's recommendations. And in the absence of any literature telling you on spacing a minimum of 3 feet, that's the national guidance. Get units that are listed by a testing agency, UL. That's probably the most common one, ASTM, ASME, all these types. Make sure they have a thermostat on. Okay, if they get to a certain time, you can adjust a thermostat and have them cut off. Make sure they have an auto shut-off on them, right? Don't put them in exits. One of the things that we see a lot is somebody will have a space heater in their room, but then they have a window unit in their window, and they can't get out their window anyways.
Wow.
So I'm not a big fan of window units for that purpose, because they're blocking your secondary egress, and you really may need that if your door becomes blocked. Don't put them onto extension cords or I don't think space heaters really are good use to put on those electrical strips. They need to be plugged directly into a wall.
Okay.
When you don't do that, you build up what's called resistance heating. So you've got electricity looking for a place to go, and it's going to find a weak point, and that can usually end up causing a fire. And then, like I said, turn them off and unplug them when they're not in use, especially at night.
Cool. Yeah. Good.
I mean, that would be the best thing. But, look for those things. I think, and I believe manufacturers spend a lot of money in research and development and engineering to make good safety practices. And I think, once again, they build good products. Right. You can type in space heater recalls, and you can always see if, something was built with a defective thermostat or something like that. So if you're looking at one of the big stores here in town and you want to find one, and you like the way it looks and what it does, get online, get on your phone, whatever.
Do some research.
See if there's any recalls on it, just to make sure that the device is manufactured safely, and then follow basic safety protocols.
Okay, good deal. Well, let's talk a little bit about some alternative heating.
People get creative.
I've seen so in Joey's career, my career, certainly your career, Ross. I think that we have probably seen things that you literally couldn't make up. I mean, they're just. Every year, it never fails. We see something different, which can range from using an oven to bringing a fire inside the home. So let's talk about a few things that we've seen. And Ross, I know from a lot of times yours is going to be, your career is investigating fires that do happen. So what are some of the craziest things you've seen as far as like alternative heating?
I think putting grills in the home.
Which is a no.
Yeah,
that is a no.
I've seen barbecue grills pulled in the home with 2x4s in them. I've seen grills put in the home lined with aluminum foil filled with water, and people using some sort of device below it to heat the water up to try to emit humidity in the air. And then, of course, a lot of people will go for the oven, open the oven door up. Very dangerous. I would never do that. We saw a lot of creativity last February, the big freeze. Right. Heard a lot of things. Saw people putting things out on their social media. Hey, try this. And every time I heard or saw that, it creeped me out. Because I start. Hey, this person needs to be on our radar in case we get a fire there.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that people are going to do. I can't even tell you all the ones I've seen.
Right.
But it's not. I don't want to.
They all come with a risk.
They come with a risk.
I mean, a grill is not made to be used indoors.
It's not made to be used under the cover of your awning.
Right.
I've seen people build fires in their garages with grills or hibachis. The lower ones.
Right.
I get it, but not a good idea.
Right.
Very, very dangerous.
I think where people, I think they just underestimate when it goes bad how fast it goes bad.
Yep.
They think they can get ahead of it. If they can get it outside, they can stop it. Once whatever happens, whatever the initial insult, it happens so quickly they don't have time to.
Well, one way to think about this, I'm in the business of fire protection, okay? And fire safety is a lifestyle choice, okay? And it's going to cost a little money. But if you want to come down to a simple, plain language, what's going to cost you more?
Right.
Is it going to be spending a little money to do something the right way?
Right.
Or is it going to be funeral cost?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Or serious bodily injury or whatever.
Right.
It's not worth it.
Right.
It may seem cumbersome, but I would pay for the professional. If you're a person that has space heaters, you don't have central heat, there are alternatives. I think that the ductless units that you put on the walls can be put in by a licensed HVAC guy, an electrician or whatever, and I think those are great alternatives. They don't go on your window. They provide heat. They provide cooling. They can vent straight to the outside. They have these exterior fans, and they're cheaper than a lot of AC units. It may require some more maintenance, but I also think it's worth it to invest in that or invest in a central air conditioning system. And for some people, they might want to consult with their insurance company, see if there's any tax rebates or not tax rebates, insurance rebates to install a system like that.
Well, a lot of this just really goes back to using whatever source or whatever you're using the way that it was intended to be used. You know, we talked about, you mentioned with the heater, with a space heater, that, you know, the manufacturer specifications, no ovens specifications talk about it being a source
right.
of heating an area. Anything that involves any type of flame at all, grill, whatever, is going to have a byproduct, and that byproduct is not meant to be indoors.
correct.
I mean, that's just, you know, and I think that's the deal is it's cold. I want to be warm. We talked about, you know, comfort, right? I want to be comfortable. And maybe people don't always think about, wow, I'm creating a flame that has a byproduct that is smoke, and I don't need to be in here breathing that. That's why it's in, anyway, I wanted to touch on those heating alternatives and just kind of talk about some of the things that maybe seem like a good idea, because people are just trying to get warm, and then that not being a good, good way to go.
Well, and the other thing is if you live in San Angelo and you're not sure, then call our office.
Yeah.
And see if you can get a fire inspector to come out and give you some pointers, tips, do's and don'ts, and so forth.
Right.
We can do that, you know. We would rather spend our time to go educate you a little bit and put you in better shape than to come with a full crew to put a fire out, instead of you just asking.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, what about, you know, I don't want to call down there. You know, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I really, really do want to know. I mean, they still need to call. I mean, this is not by them calling you and asking you to come and look at whatever. I mean, what if someone, I don't want to, I'll get the fire department in here, I may get in trouble. But we're talking about the possibility. I don't want to consider
it, getting you in trouble. I don't want to come investigate your house fire.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
I tell everybody, you know, look, we're not concerned with whether your house burns down. We're concerned that you can get out of it safely. So if you have a house fire and you've gotten out of it safely, that tells me that the features of fire protection in your home, the exits, the smoke detectors, everything worked. Okay. Yeah. And then that's just what happened. But let's work on prevention. You know, I'm amazed at how often we don't do adult fire prevention education, and we forget. You know, we get older and we forget. There's nothing wrong with calling us. We'd rather go over there and tell you, hey, let's not do this. Let's do it this way, or, you know, whatever the situation may be, than showing up. I don't want to show up and have to investigate a fire where somebody got injured, somebody's at the hospital, and we're putting water on a house that's probably going to have to be demoed now because of the
I think a little bit of fire education goes a long, long way.
It goes a very long way.
They underestimate just a little bit of education.
Well, and you know, you think about three of us sitting here. You know, you're going out and educating and putting measures in place for fire prevention, and the reality is people and don't always follow those, and then we have a job, right? I mean, sometimes accidents happen, but a lot of times, you know, those measures that you've put in place or that you're going out and inspecting aren't followed, and then a fire happens, and that's why we have a job. So, you know, and then you are coming after the fact, and then, oh, yep, right here, this wasn't followed according to plan. You know, that, you know, smoke detectors didn't alert whatever, or hey, the right exits are, you know, the exits are blocked or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, like, it all is one big circle. So I mean, and that's the whole point of us sitting here and talking about this.
And
today.
while we're on that topic, let's just talk about egress and smoke detection. So you should have a front door and a back door. You should have a door out of the room leading into the hallway, and a window or a door leading directly to the outside. And all of those should open without a key, tool, special knowledge, or effort. Okay? Easy. Anybody should be able to get out either way. One's blocked, the other becomes available. You should have smoke detection in every room used for sleeping. That could be more than every bedroom. You may have a room that you've now modified. Now that's a sleeping room. So you should have a smoke detector in each one of those rooms and in the vicinity of those rooms. So if you have 2 room doors next to each other in the hallway, you should have a smoke detector out there. That way, if that smoke comes from the kitchen or another area of the house, that smoke detector goes off and people are alerted. I also recommend hard wiring smoke detectors. So if one goes off and you have a child in another opposite end of your house, yours goes off too. They're now making those through Bluetooth technology, so they're wireless. Invest in that. That's a small investment. If you do something like that and you put hardwired smoke detectors, once again, See if you can get your money back. Call your insurance company. They may say, well, go get us an inspection by your fire department. Okay, call us up. We'll go do an inspection. We can give you reports saying they have interconnected smoke detection. Turn it in and see if you can make some money back. You never know. Now, with all that being said, I'm a big advocate for sprinklers, okay? If you can afford granite countertops in your house, you can afford a residential sprinkler system, okay? It's well worth its money.
Right.
Well worth its money.
Well, like you said, that just goes back to, living the fire safety life may cost more, but what's more expensive? I mean,
Well,
that's
correct.
exactly.
And there's so many misnomers. I would always challenge somebody, get online and read about sprinklers. You know, everybody's worried about, hey, I'm worried that a sprinkler head's going to bust and it's going to flood out my house. And I'm like, well, would you rather have a flooded house or a burned down house with nothing left? Or what do you want? There's very, very low instances of sprinklers going off. And nowadays they can hook them into your water heaters through PEX. They can do all these different types of things. They're cheaper to install, and then you can get your money back on that through your insurance because they're going to charge you less if you have a sprinklered home. So it's well worth the investment.
Well, good to know.
Yep. I like the suggestion a lot.
I do.
I think you're going to see a lot more of those in the future, residential
too.
sprinkler systems. So.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I think, inevitably it's going to get cold. Man, so talking about this and talking about, hopefully we've answered some things that I always wondered that, or I wasn't ever sure about that. Oh man, I think the goal of us talking about this is someone go, oh man, I got a space heater plugged in right next to a wall. I need to move that away. That's what this is for. That's why we are, like doing this show, because we're, bringing people on that
I think it's just making people aware. I think a lot of times you fall into the misnomer, oh, it can't happen to me, or that's always somebody else. The reason we're here is because it's happened to a lot of people. We've seen it year after year after year. My daughters love candles. I hate candles. I hate open flame. In her room with the door closed, and we go to leave, did you blow that out? I hate that. And, she's like, oh, JoJo. And I like, the reason I bring it up so often is because I've been on so many house fires that started by a simple candle.
Well, there's so many variables. Accidents happen. We talked about, we can take every precaution and fire safety measure, and inevitably something happens. Something happens, dog knocks something over, fall asleep and I knock it over. There's just so many variables there that, that's why, again, why we have a job, is because accidents happen. So, well, Ross, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for everything. If you have anything, please reach out to Ross's office, the Fire Prevention Office. Any question you might have, anything you might need, and they can absolutely steer you in the right direction. So, well, thanks for being with us today. And for On Scene, I'm Mason Matthews.
I'm Joey Huffman.
And we'll see you next time.
Next time.